So let's dive into this a little bit of your economic socialism, and you talk about the working class. And I think by working class, it's always a term that's used and people don't really define it, but I think you're talking about people without a college education, people who work 9-to-5 jobs, maybe in a factory, or they're a truck driver or a school bus driver, a teacher. It's hard to exactly to know where to draw the line of what the working class is and what separates them from the elite. Maybe the elite are what people are now calling the pajama class, the ones who can stay at home in a pandemic and work, as opposed to losing their job in a pandemic because, you can't do it from home, like maybe a car mechanic, something like that. But one of the contentions in your book is that the focus on cultural Marxism, or what you refer to in the book as kind of a woke political agenda, that focus has allowed the news media to ignore the class differential and the class struggle that certain people in our society are struggling with. And that you say almost that it's convenient for them to be able to rail on racial distinctions, and it frees them up from having to think hard about economic division. Can you help us understand why the media is drawn to this racial issue at the expense of the class issue?
Because they've benefited from income inequality is the sad answer. So journalists used to be working class. For most of the 20th century, most journalists, the vast majority of journalists, did not have a college degree. You just would pick it up on the job. It was like being a car mechanic. You would sort of show up for an apprenticeship, and your boss also didn't have a college degree, and he would teach you how to ask questions, right? And how to write. And there's been this huge status revolution in journalism. Journalists today are way more educated than almost any other industry in America, even though you can't really teach journalism. You don't really need a college degree to do it. And they're in the top 10%. So what do you do when you're a liberal and you're high on the sense that you're more virtuous than conservatives and more virtuous than even the people who are a little bit less liberal than you, right? Who live next door to you, but you're benefiting from economic inequality. You look at what truck drivers are making and waiters, and you look at what you're paying your cleaning lady and your nanny, and you know that it's pittance compared to what you're making to sit at home in your pajamas and type away on your keyboard on Twitter. How do you sustain a sense of your own virtue in a situation like that when you're clearly on the wrong side of this issue, benefiting in real ways, economic ways, lining your pockets with something that is driving the incomes down of people, on the other side of the fence? And I argue that a moral panic about racism, the invented notion that in America is still a white supremacy, the false view that Americans are still racist and getting more and more racist, and that racism poses a huge threat to people of color in America. This invented view was the perfect alibi if you were a rich liberal who still wanted to feel more virtuous than everybody you knew, because you could say, I'm the one who gets it. I'm the one who understands the true inequality without ever having to disrupt the actual inequality that put you on top. That's the argument I make in the book. Now, I think it's really important to point out, I don't think that they're doing this cynically. I do think that these people, they really are sort of they really believe it. They don't think that they're lying when they say America is still a white supremacy. But I also don't think they would have allowed themselves to be convinced by something so obviously false if they weren't literally lining their pockets with the proceeds.
Yeah, because you can't change your race, but you could donate more. You could pay a more fair wage. And I think that's one of the points that you make is it's convenient to find something that you can't change about yourself and rail against that instead of critiquing yourself about things that you really could change, but it would come at an expense to your own lifestyle, I guess, right?
Absolutely. And I think that there's even another thing, which is, so they'll say, well, we vote for the people who care about the working class. And I would argue two things to that. The first is, I don't think that an expanded welfare state is a pro-working class agenda. Working class Americans don't want more handouts. They want jobs that give them dignity. And really neither side is offering them that. The Republicans are offering this trickle down nonsense that immiserates the working class. And the Democrats are offering more welfare, which puts them at the basically, they become serfs, right? Serfs of rich liberals, right? Here, have more money to not work. work, right? That's that. They don't want that either. They want good jobs where you can, raise a family in dignity with one income so the mother can stay home and raise the children. And neither side is offering that. But the second thing I would say is that, the Republicans did start with the demonizing, but the Democrats have been very, very invested in a narrative that demonizes everybody on the other side of the political aisle as deeply racist. And what they've done by doing that is they have foreclosed on really important partnerships that could have helped in so many ways. And just as one example, President Trump's economic agenda was very socialist. People don't like to talk about this, but he got rid of NAFTA. He started a trade war with China. He imposed tariffs. He closed the border, which these are all things that Bernie Sanders was talking about doing in 2015 that President Trump actually did. And instead of having the liberals, the lefties be like, wait a minute, this is pretty good. Let's support this guy. And, maybe he'll even do this or even do that or even do that. Instead of doing that, they just every single day, he's the most racist, homophobic, transphobic, blah, 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 anti-Semitic every day. And that to me was just such a missed opportunity to where you see that there are people on both sides, for example, pushing bills to make it illegal for Congress members to trade stocks, very important bills. But there's no world anymore in which they could do that together. And I think that that's very sad.
I mean, there's so many places I want to go here, and we're going to jump around a little bit from where I was headed. But I think you brought up something that I've been thinking about for several years now, and I haven't heard too many people comment on it. And that is that President Trump's economic agenda sounded a lot like Bernie Sanders' economic agenda back in 2016. And in a sense, they were saying something really different than President Obama and Hillary Clinton were saying, because Obama and Clinton, and it started back with Reagan, and it kind of built up this idea of the meritocratic system that, if you work hard and do your best, that you can rise to the top. And Reagan started saying it more than any other president up until his time. But the person who really talked in that language was President Obama. Work hard, do your best, and you should be able to move up the system. That, in a sense, was the American dream. Hillary Clinton preached that in 2016. Here's what she said at Ohio State. She said, and this is about a month before the election, she said, "I want this to be a true meritocracy. I'm tired of inequality. I want people to feel like they can get ahead if they work for it." And then all of a sudden, President Trump comes along, and wasn't president at that time, and he never talks that way. Never at all. Instead, what he talks about are winners and losers. He says the system is rigged against you. And that sounded, not in the exact same language, but pretty close to what Bernie Sanders had been saying. And so I can almost imagine a world, I don't know if it's 10 years, 20 years, or maybe this world will never come into existence, but President Trump and Bernie Sanders would be in the same political party, and maybe like a Paul Ryan, the former Speaker of the House, and Hillary Clinton would be in the same party. What's your take on this meritocracy and the Trump-Sanders phenomenon?
I could not agree with you more. I think that's such an astute observation. The meritocracy, obviously, we should live in a world where, every budding Einstein stuck in an inner city has an opportunity to get to Harvard. That's obviously, we should live in a world like that. But when that's the only form of equality that you recognize, equality of the elites, it begs the question, what about everybody else? Like, what about everyone else who's left behind in that inner city? What is your plan for them? And there's no plan for them because these people only respect intelligence, talent, smarts. They only respect that information, knowledge. They have no respect for the people who make the things, who grow the things, who do the things. They have lost the ability to respect the backbone of this nation. And it's just so gross. And they don't even hide it anymore. And I agree with you. It's so baked into the meritocratic ideal, which sounds great on paper, but is still about dividing people. It's just that they want, the successful people very, very high on top and everybody else below on the bottom. And I think that's a very unreligious way to think about things, because we believe that, first of all, in my tradition, we believe that the least among us have the most to teach us. There's no situation in which it's okay to worship some talent and elevate people like that over others. But it's also, that's not a just society. A perfect meritocracy is an unjust society, right? So I love the way that you phrase that, in terms of, can there be a realignment between the populists on the left, which is, me, Sanders, et cetera, and the populists on the right, people like Josh Hawley and, Marco Rubio and Donald Trump and so forth, and then allow the kind of, the neoliberals and the neoconservatives to form their own party and worship at the altar of talent and money, and leave the rest of us alone. I mean, that is my dream. That is what I am working for. I think working class Americans are not polarized politically at all. I think polarization is a totally elite phenomenon, because the elites, the political elites, the economic elites, the publishing elites, the journalistic elites, they make money and get power off of telling us that we're divided. But if you get out of New York, get out of DC, go to churches across the country, you have Democrats and Republicans praying side by side, white people and black people praying side by side. You go to John Deere, you go to any of these union strikes, you have conservatives and liberals standing side by side. They don't care who anybody voted for. It's just not part of their worldview. And it's because, I think on the left, we've really replaced community and spirituality with information and knowledge, and politics, that's their form of virtue. And so they really obsess over polarization. So I pray for what you're describing, that we will, be able to get past this and really elevate the working class. And I do get hope when I look around the country, because I think Americans are really much better than their elites.